Paco knelt in the dusty courtyard of an abandoned colonial hacienda on the outskirts of Tepoztlan. The air felt heavy, as if something just beyond sight quietly pulsed with ancient breath. He had come in search of a relic described in old family journals, a living obsidian mirror, rumored to reveal a forbidden city hidden between worlds. In his pocket, he carried a handwritten passage from one of his great-grandfather's notebooks. When day and night stand still, step into the mirror's shadow to see the city float. Those cryptic words had haunted him for years. His great-grandfather, a collector of Aztec lore, had vanished after telling family and friends he was close to a discovery that would rewrite the region's history. Everything pointed to a clandestine journey across remote territories, culminating in this place, a crumbling husk of Spanish architecture blanketed in creeping vines. For generations, his family had lived in the shadow of that disappearance, and now he had decided to investigate for himself. Barely visible among the courtyard stones lay fragments of broken clay vessels. Though chipped and paint-faded, Paco could still make out faint red spiral motifs reminiscent of pre-Hispanic design. As he turned each fragment in his hands, he sensed a humming beneath his feet. Something in this courtyard was alive. He quietly recited the notes he had memorized. "We come to the mirror at night, for that is when it breathes. The howling wind is the guardian. Show respect." The sky had darkened with the approach of evening. A storm threatened the region, swirling brooding clouds overhead. The descending dusk painted the horizon with a layered tapestry of crimson and gold. Paco kept his eyes on the courtyard, scanning for any sign, some clue left behind by his ancestor. He stepped carefully around the rubble, listening for any shift in the wind. Finally, in the far corner, he discovered a stairway leading down into the earth. Stacked stones formed the steps, the doorway half collapsed, the wooden frame rotted away. A swirl of dust rose when he pulled at the broken door, straining to pry it open. His flashlight's beam cut through a thick gloom as he descended, revealing a cramped chamber lined with battered crates and stone shelves. At its center, surrounded by candle stubs, sat an obsidian mirror nearly the size of a man's torso. It leaned against the wall, dark and shimmering, the surface smooth as still water. With trembling determination, Paco lifted the mirror. A faint glow emanated from the polished black glass. He felt a gentle vibration, as if the mirror held a heartbeat. Leaning in close, he could detect swirling shapes in the depths of the obsidian. They twisted, coming together like tongues of black smoke. The effect entranced him, and he soon lost track of time. Slowly, as if responding to his presence, the mirror became almost too warm to hold. He retreated to the courtyard, carrying it with reverence. Outdoors, night had fully fallen, the thick clouds overhead swirling with unshed rain. In the faint moonlight, the obsidian glinted with dark promise. Paco placed it on a low stone pedestal and lit the single candle he had brought. The flickering glow danced across the black surface, creating snake-like patterns on the walls. Against his chest, his heart pounded. He recalled his great-grandfather's final note. The city was said to hover between worlds. Through this mirror, an ancient Aztec mystery might open its gates. The legends spoke of a place that refused to be conquered, one that anchored itself in the realm of illusions and guarded knowledge of a long-forgotten lineage. When thunder rolled through the sky, the mirror trembled in sympathy. Paco steadied it, feeling a pulse echoing in his hand. He could not tell if it was an earthquake or just his imagination, but he saw ripples where the surface of the obsidian should have been solid. Then, a vision emerged. The black swirl parted to show a towering city of stepped pyramids etched against a swirling, colorless horizon. The city seemed suspended in an expanse of shimmering mist. Startled, Paco shouted, and, as though in response, the swirling shapes inside the obsidian congealed into a single, glowing doorway. A breeze rose in the courtyard, spinning dust in a small vortex around him. The mirror's faint heartbeat quickened, and in that moment he remembered the instructions. When day and night stand still, step into the mirror's shadow. Unsure if day and night were truly standing still, evening was well underway. He felt a strange certainty that time itself had bent to accommodate this moment. He reached out. His fingertips made contact with the dark surface, and the mirror seemed to flood him with warmth. The darkness at the stone corners of the hacienda lengthened, pressing closer. Determined, he leaned forward, pushing more of his arm into the mirror. A bewildering coolness overtook him. Then, with a sensation like stepping through a liquid film, he found himself stumbling onto a cool stone floor in a land that had not known modernity. He stood, breath stolen by the sight of a magnificent city rising around him. It hovered above an endless void, with a vast horizon of swirling silver clouds. No scorching sun baked these streets. Instead, a diffuse, otherworldly light coated everything in a hushed twilight. Here were soaring pyramids, wide plazas, and canals bridging different levels, as if gravity itself had slightly altered. Rich murals depicted eagles, jaguars, and gods with fearsome visage, all swirling with cosmic motifs. The buildings looked freshly carved, the paint still vibrant. There were figures too, men and women wearing elaborate headdresses and colourful cloaks, gliding gracefully across the walkways. At first, Paco thought they must be illusions. But no, these were real, living inhabitants of a place the world had long considered myth. A kneeling woman offered incense in front of a temple lined with carved obsidian pillars. In a nearby courtyard, children laughed while chasing coloured paper kites. The low hum he had sensed back at the hacienda now reverberated from every stone. Cautious yet enthralled, Paco began walking. The city smelled of copal, incense, fresh blossoms, and a faint trace of cooking maize. Soft chanting rose on a breeze, and drummers added a heartbeat-like tempo to the air. The people barely noticed him, which only fueled his curiosity. This was no dream. These denizens looked so close to how he imagined the Aztecs at their peak, yet he sensed something beyond normal time at work. As he passed a group chanting beside a massive turquoise mosaic, a tall man with a regal, feathered headdress beckoned him closer. "Stranger," the man said, addressing Paco in Nahuatl. That he could understand the words so readily startled him. Yet the accent and syntax seemed perfectly natural in this place. "You come from the mortal realm, do you not?" Paco nodded, adrenaline surging. "Yes. I followed the obsidian mirror." The man nodded gravely. "We have been waiting for one who comes through the living mirror. One who would see our city aloft between worlds. I am Xochipilli, a caretaker of these sacred grounds. Come, you should meet those who keep the old knowledge." Paco led Paco through winding avenues, passing palaces with gold-framed doors. At certain turns, the roads vanished at abrupt edges, revealing swirling nothingness below. Nonetheless, no one seemed concerned. They simply moved with the unwavering confidence that the city's edges would remain intact. Eventually, they arrived at a broad plaza centered by a temple, centered by a temple, centered by a temple, a mirror. Each surface glimmered with the same black reflection as the mirror that had drawn Paco here. Inside, soft lamplight illuminated carved reliefs depicting gods rising from swirling smoke. At the apex of one relief was a figure Paco recognized from the stories. Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror whose face emerged from the darkness. He recalled that Tezcatlipoca was said to be a trickster, a god of ancestral memory. On a stone dais, an elderly woman dressed in embroidered robes sat with her eyes closed, hands resting gently on her knees. Xochipilli quietly signaled for Paco to wait, then approached and knelt. When she opened her eyes, they shone gold in the lamplight, and she spoke softly, her voice deep with authority. "So, you have come to us at last. I am Citlali, guide of those who wander between worlds." She rose slowly, leaning on a staff inlaid with turquoise. "You bear the mirror's call. Your coming was foretold not only in your own lineage but in our legends as well." Paco took a moment to steady his voice. My great-grandfather, he sought this city. He disappeared trying to find it. Sedley tilted her head thoughtfully. Some who enter never return if they choose to remain with us. The knowledge found here can outweigh the lure of the mortal realm. Others vanish because the city tests them and finds them unworthy. He recalled the stories describing how the city's secrets were guarded by illusions. He glanced around, gathering courage. I want to understand, not just for my great-grandfather, but for the truth of our shared past. How can such a place exist here, floating between worlds? She motioned for him to sit on a carved bench. This realm is the breath of Tezcatlipoca. The god's mirror forms a bridge. Though your ancestors named our deity in many ways, to us he is the living portal, both the origin and the destination. The mirror's power reveals the city not separated by distance, but by perspective. Others have glimpsed it in dreams or in fleeting reflections in polished obsidian, but only those chosen have dared to step through. Tjapili pointed to a massive mural along the temple wall. It showed two worlds overlapping like twin circles in a Venn diagram. In the overlap stood a single city, the place they were in now. Legend says that if the city's existence is revealed and taken by force, it will collapse back into the realm of illusions and be lost forever. Our ancestors wove this reality from our gods' gifts to preserve ancient knowledge and protect it from destruction. Paco felt a pulse of sorrow at the mention of destruction, recalling the brutality of conquest. Is this the knowledge my great-grandfather sought? Did he find it? Citlali placed her hand on his shoulder gently. He arrived, yes. He deliberated for many nights in this hall, but in the end, he chose to stay. The city accepted him. He lives among us. Emotions warred in Paco's chest. He had grown up believing his great-grandfather had died. And again, the man's disappearance had always been a mystery. Now he might still be alive in this suspended realm. His heart pounded with hope. May I see him? She nodded and motioned for Tjapili to guide him. He was led deeper into the temple complex, through wide corridors adorned with hanging tapestries. They emerged into a courtyard alive with soft music. Aztec flutes warbled alongside the steady cadence of a drum. A group of men and women was gathered near a central fountain, where water flowed perpetually from a carved jaguar's mouth. One of the older men had hair flecked with silver, but he stood with unbent vigor. His chocolate-brown skin bore faint lines of age, yet his eyes shone with an unearthly clarity. He wore richly embroidered robes. When he turned to see Tjapili and the newcomer, his eyes locked on Paco's face, and a flicker of astonishment crossed the man's features. Could it be? The older man whispered, and then, with a trembling voice, Paco? Paco's breath caught in his throat. The resemblance was immediate. Though the man looked older than the photographs, the eyes matched perfectly the face from a single surviving black and white portrait. His great-grandfather, Mateo. It's you, his voice cracked. When you vanished, my grandmother spent years searching. Tears sparkled in the older man's eyes as he closed the distance, placing a gentle hand on Paco's shoulder. I could not leave this place once I came to understand. His voice resonated with deep compassion. At first, I planned to return, but when the city's mysteries opened themselves to me, I chose to remain and protect them. I feared the knowledge might be lost forever if shared unwisely. Paco's shoulders tensed. A subtle wave of anger fought with his sense of wonder and relief. That knowledge came at the cost of your family's heartbreak. They believed you dead. Mateo bowed his head. The guilt has weighed on me. If I return, though, this realm's fragile link might become compromised. There are powerful forces that would exploit what we have here. We never had the chance to stop the Spaniards all those centuries ago, but this city survived because it was hidden. If reconquered by the outside world, it would cease to be. Silence enveloped them, broken only by the soft plinking of water in the fountain. Paco studied the courtyard's other inhabitants, figures who might be centuries old, living in a place untouched by time. Each wore the same expression of quiet guardianship, a fierce resolve to defend the sanctity of their sanctuary. "What do the gods ask of me?" Paco rasped. The words surprised even him, but they felt correct, as if the city's presence were speaking through him. Mateo exhaled, relief and sorrow mingling. "We stand on the brink of a new cycle. Tezcatlipoca's guardians sense that our illusions may be wearing thin. If the outside world notices cracks, perhaps you came at exactly the right moment. You must help keep the secret of this place safe, or if you believe the time has come for the city to join the mortal realm, then a choice must be made." Citlali appeared at the courtyard's edge. "The mirror's living. It has called many across centuries. Some have tried to harness its power for conquest, but they've failed. Others come seeking knowledge. A few sought only immortality. What each finds is the measure of their own heart." Paco realized the enormity of the choice before him. Returning to the normal world could mean people would never know that there existed a living piece of Aztec heritage, pristine in its original splendor. Yet, revealing this city risked exploitation. Would archaeological authorities swarm and degrade this realm? Would governments claim it? Or was it better kept secret, allowed to endure in the hush of an eternal twilight? And what of his great-grandfather? He had found peace here. Was that not enough of a reason to protect this city's existence? Conflicted, Paco sank onto a bench. After a few moments in silent reflection, he asked, "Is it possible to journey home through the mirror without disturbing the city's delicate balance?" Citlali inclined her head. "The portal is open to one of your blood. The city will remain only as long as you do not betray its location to those who would corrupt it." Xochitl spoke up in a firm voice. "We do not demand that you stay or leave. We ask you to weigh your heart. Tezcatlipoca sees beyond illusions." Time seemed to stand still. Paco could almost feel the cosmic interplay overhead, as if the swirling clouds around the floating city were the folds of fate. He noticed how the old songs drifting through the alleyways carried both joy and sorrow, an awareness of the tragedies that had befallen so much of their people, yet also the unwavering resolve to keep culture alive here. He rose, breathing in the sweet tang of copal incense for what he suspected might be the last time. He turned to his great-grandfather. "I understand why you stayed, but I believe our heritage deserves to be remembered by our world, not in textbooks alone, but in spirit. Still, I can't unleash a wave of exploiters. I must be discreet. Use knowledge responsibly. Perhaps there's a way to support the continuity of both worlds without dooming this place to vanish." Mateo's eyes glistened. "You have your grandmother's resolve. My boy, if you must return, carry the truth with care. Let people honor our ancestors without endangering them again." They embraced. Paco felt the warmth of his family's legacy pass through this man's arms, bridging generations. He realized that, while he could never fully share the specifics, he could guard the city's existence in his heart. Perhaps he could quietly ensure some aspects of Aztec heritage were rekindled in modern life. A subtle revival of language, customs, and art to keep the memory alive in a dignified manner. He would never forget the living city's brilliance. Citlali and Xochipelli walked him back through the temple's corridors. At the threshold was a tall archway carved with swirling glyphs. A shimmering black portal filled the space, identical to the obsidian mirror's surface. Before he stepped through, Citlali pressed into his hands a small, polished shard of black obsidian shaped like a teardrop. "A seed," she said gently, "to remind you of what you have seen and to guide your dreams." He bowed his head, tears threatening. "Thank you." The transition back was subtle at first. He felt a gentle coolness pulling him forward, then a sudden whoosh. The next thing he knew, he was kneeling in the courtyard of the deserted hacienda, surrounded by still air and the hush of night. The obsidian mirror lay at his feet, inert once again. The old tapestry of clouds overhead had disappeared. The storm that threatened earlier must have moved on. Instead, a quiet moon hung in a clear sky. Trembling, he lit his flashlight and inspected the mirror. Its surface was as black and glossy as ever, but it no longer felt warm. He stood slowly. The courtyard's stones seemed empty, lacking the hue that had drawn him in earlier. It was as if the city's presence had slipped away, leaving only normal reality in its wake. He pressed his hand to his pocket and felt the shard Sitlali had given him, an undeniable proof of his journey. He whispered thanks to Tezcatlipaka, the smoking mirror, for allowing him safe passage. Then, picking up the mirror, he returned down the steps into the basement chamber. By the light of his flashlight, he carefully propped the mirror against the wall where he had found it and covered it with a plain cloth. He had a sense that it was best left hidden and protected until another worthy seeker should come, if the gods so willed. When he emerged into the courtyard again, dawn had begun to lighten the sky. Pale streaks of blue and grey signalled the approaching sunrise. He glanced around at the crumbling hacienda, thinking of how ephemeral all human construction seemed compared to that hidden city's timelessness. A part of him ached to remain there, free from the burdens of the modern world. But he also felt a new calling, to honour the heritage quietly and with reverence. He left the hacienda with steady steps, determined to share this treasure in the only safe way he could. Over the following weeks, he pored over historical archives, met with elders in small mountain villages who still spoke Nahuatl, and listened to songs and stories, echoing centuries of cultural continuity. He traveled to Tenochtitlan's old site in the heart of Mexico City, wandering around the modern bustle while imagining the ancient capital that once stood there. Often, late at night, he laid the obsidian shard in his palm. When moonlight hit the shard, he glimpsed faint flickers, a city suspended in a twilight realm. He learned to preserve secrets in his writing, embedding subtle references to the city in the lines of ascending serpents or hidden shapes in charcoal sketches, abstract enough that no scholar of modern archaeology would glean its precise meaning, yet resonant for those who still felt the presence of their ancestral gods. He composed small poems in Nahuatl and left them in local community centers, quietly championing ancestral languages. Every so often, he would return to the hacienda, to the basement chamber, to ensure the obsidian mirror remained safe and undisturbed. He brought fresh cloth to protect it from dust, lit a candle, and offered a brief thanks to the guardians who permitted him that glimpse beyond the veil. The mirror never stirred in his presence again. He suspected the city only opened its arms at certain times, for specific reasons, and that he had already fulfilled his part in that cycle. Yet, in rare fleeting moments, twilight or midnight, he thought he heard a hum rising from the dry earth. It might have been wind in the trees or the echo of memory, but he knew something living pulsed out there beneath everything. He would hold the obsidian shard in his hand and swear he saw a shimmer. Sometimes he closed his eyes and found himself standing again in that luminous city's plaza, with painted columns and incense drifting in the air. He saw the face of his great-grandfather, content, unbowed by time. If friends asked Paco what he was doing with his research, he would speak only in broad terms, about validating certain local legends. They'd nod politely. Some gossiped that he was simply chasing ghosts of his family's obsession. Little did they know how profoundly right and wrong they were. If anyone pressed too hard, a small warm smile would creep onto his face, recalling the city that floats between worlds. And so the secret endured. It was guarded in silence, revealed in glimpses only to those who listened with their hearts. In every reflection of polished obsidian, in each swirl of incense, the city's essence remained, sustained by unwavering belief. true wonders did not demand recognition to exist. They merely needed souls open enough to step through the mirror of possibility. Paco would always be one of those souls. He never forgot the hush of twilight in that other realm, never forgot the bright plumage of Quetzal feather headdresses or the soft patter of footsteps on floating streets of stone. The memory drove him to respect history and to honor the living cultures descended from those who once thrived in the Valley of Mexico. Now and then, he felt a pang of longing. But as the seasons turned and the years lengthened, he carried on, an unseen guardian of an otherworldly city. Its presence lived in every black mirror that reflected the promise of more than meets the eye. And perhaps, one day, another brave seeker would find the fragments of his story, follow the clues, and discover anew the city in the mirror. The Aztec portal, revealed only to those who sought to unite memory and hope.